Let me remind you that last year, Hormuz Strait accounted for about one-third of the world's oil exports. Now this route is essentially cut off, and oil production that depends strongly on the use of the Hormuz Strait, completely shifting Middle East oil supplies to schemes not using the Hormuz Strait is hardly feasible now, and it carries great political risks that are, of course, still there because consumers need oil right now. I emphasize Russia is a reliable energy supplier. This has always been the case, and of course, we will continue supplying oil and gas to countries that are themselves reliable partners. And I mean, not only our partners in Asia Pacific, but also states the Eastern Europe, such as Slovakia and Hungary. Let me remind you that last year, Hormuz Strait accounted for about one-third of the world's oil exports. That's about 14 million barrels a day, 80% of which were going to the Asia-Pacific countries. Now this route is essentially cut off, and oil production that depends strongly on the use of the Hormuz Strait threatens to stop in the next few months. And oil storages in the region are being filled with oil that cannot be transported away or is getting too expensive to transport. And of course, completely shifting Middle East oil supplies to schemes not using the Hormuz Strait is hardly feasible now, because shifting logistics, changing logistics will not only take time, but will also require great expenditure for infrastructure, expanding seaport terminals and so on. And it carries great political risks that are, of course, still there because consumers need oil right now. World oil prices are rising. As of today, 5:30 a.m. in Moscow, oil passed $119 per barrel. It's currently at $103 per barrel. So prices are rising and the trend is upwards. Point out right away that Russia warned many times that attempts at destabilizing the situation in the Middle East will inevitably threaten the global energy complex, will lead to a spike in oil prices, disrupt supply chains across the world, and will disrupt long-term investment plans. This is obviously happening right now because we see logistical problems along traditional carbohydrates, carbon supply chains. It disrupts global supply chains, and it affects industries across the world and affects the entire system of international economic relations, because disrupted supply chains often entail other problems of economic nature, boost inflation, and so on. And oil and gas production and manufacturing suffers as a result. EU countries from 25th of April plan to impose additional restrictions on Russian LNG and energy, all the way to imposing a complete ban on such supplies in 2028. In this regard, I've already instructed the government to evaluate the possibility of stopping energy supplies to the European market without waiting for the door to be shut in our face. And those volumes will be shifted to other markets that are more interesting and promising to us. Right now, the market situation is developing in such a way that if we make this transition right now, if we shift to markets that really need increased supplies, we will get a stable foothold there. in markets where there is reliable demand and where there are reliable long-term relations. The states that are building long-term relations with Russia, constructive relationships with Russia.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.